We have an amazing program today as ExED celebrates its 20th anniversary. I'm Anita Landecker, the Executive Director of ExED. We are honored that Father Gregory Boyle, who will be here soon, will be our keynote speaker because we believe that Father G's message is so important and relevant to all of our work. We are giving you his book, Tattoos on the Heart, as our holiday gift to you. It's a good book. Our lunch is catered by Homegirl Cafe. Our dessert is sponsored by the California Credit Union. I do need to give a big shout out. We could not do this holiday luncheon event without our amazing event planner, Erica Friedman, with a company called Events by Erica. STEM Prep is a terrific school network led by Emilio Pack, who ran the highest performing school at the Alliance and then was a leader at LMU before he started his own charter school. I just found out today he's been named by Ed Week as Education Leader of the Century. Now, I am so glad you get to meet Emilio Pack.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for coming to Math and Science College Prep. This is the high school of a K-12 network. We have a middle school right down the street, and we just opened up our first elementary school. So now we have these little TK and kindergarten students, 4 and 5 years old, in STEM labs, designing projects, making airplanes, and learning what it is to change the future by becoming the next generation of engineers and scientists. As Anita mentioned, I started off my career in the charter world with Alliance College Ready Schools, and then went to Loyola Marymount University. And finally, there came a time where I wanted to do more. And I spoke to my family, obviously. But before I launched STEM Prep, I talked to 2 people. And I knew if these 2 people would believe in me, then I might have a chance. One of those people was Judy Burton. And the second person I called and said, Anita, I'm thinking about this, but I'm not sure, was Anita Landecker. So I just want to take this moment in front of all these people to just say, you know, without Judy, without Anita, there's no STEM Prep. Thank you. And it's not just Anita, but the entire ExED family is just that, a family. When I see Mike Johnston in our offices, I don't think, oh, there's ExEDs here. I think, oh, there's Mike, our Mike. Same was with Tammy and with Jessica before them. So ExED, thank you so much, and congratulations on this 20th year anniversary. You have helped so many people in this room in so many different ways. It really is an honor to celebrate this with you. STEM Prep is really in an interesting place. We finally have K-12 students. We are trying to make a difference in a world that is almost void of minority engineers and STEM professionals, let alone female minority professionals. This school was created for kids like Miranda, kids who I think undoubtedly will disrupt the status quo for what the faces of future engineers look like. So without further ado, Miranda.
I am Latina. It is a simple truth, yet understanding all of the complexities that come along with this background can be challenging. I was born and raised in East Los Angeles, a predominantly Hispanic community. I was surrounded by people who looked like me, spoke like me. So many of them had never received a college education. There were no conversations about college, and if there was, they were never focused on STEM. This world was all I knew, and at a young age, I never dared to look beyond. I thought graduating from high school and going straight into the workforce was what you do. I thought that was what I was going to do. It was not until 9th grade, when I started my time at Math and Science College Preparatory, that my view began to expand beyond these horizons. I was given the resources and support that I needed to achieve success and transcend the limitations that were placed on me. Some of the most memorable experiences of my academic career have been in MSCP's STEM pathway classes. As a freshman, I entered the engineering pathway and took the first course, Introduction to Engineering Design. On the very first day, we were greeted with the question, what is an engineer and what do they do? This was a question I didn't have the answer to. I didn't know what an engineer was. I looked around the class, and it seemed like my peers didn't know either. It seemed normal to not know, but it shouldn't have been normal. Just like me, my peers were raised in a world where you aren't told STEM is an option, that you can be an engineer. Over that year, we learned everything about dimensioning, multi-view drawings, and computer-aided design. On the very last day of school, I held in my hand a small 3D printed bird. I had sketched it myself, I had modeled it myself. That bird was all my own, and as I held it in my hand, I felt what it was like to be an engineer. I felt what it was like to create something. This was one of the first moments that opened me up to the idea of pursuing a future in STEM. Of course, I still had my doubts that I could ever really be successful in STEM. In the back of my mind, I heard the echoes of what society wanted me to believe. Do you remember where you come from, who you are? You're Hispanic, you're a girl, do you remember that? STEM wasn't meant for you. That's not what people of your background do. At the start of my junior year, my mother returned home from a deployment to Afghanistan. Her return eased some of the responsibilities I had at home, and I was given more time to spend after school. I used this time to become more involved in extracurriculars. I founded Math Club. I joined the school's Associated Student Body and Game Development Club. I fell in love with these activities, and I still participate in them to this day. In fact, I am currently a lead programmer in Game Development Club and the co-president of our Associated Student Body. As much as I love programming games in Game Development Club, as much as I love building up school spirit in ASB, the contributions that I am most proud of are my contributions to Math Club. Every Tuesday, I spend a few hours after school tutoring my peers in math. I've seen so many students come in feeling defeated, like math was just something they weren't capable of. All it took was a bit of guidance to transform these students' greatest doubts into confidence. The changes that I saw in my peers made me reflect about my own insecurities. If my peers were able to overcome their doubts about math, why couldn't I overcome my fears about pursuing STEM? They thought they were incapable. They thought they couldn't achieve because of some preconceived idea that couldn't have been farther from the truth. My peers showed me that I couldn't let my assumed limitations stop me from doing what made me happy. STEM was what I wanted to pursue, and regardless of what obstacles stood in my way, I was ready to take them head on. I was ready to fight for the future that I wanted. For me, my fight took the form of summer enrichment programs. I spent 3 summers in Caltech's Community Science Academy. I worked in undergraduate labs and conducted research in a variety of areas of science, from extracting genes from bacteria samples to building my own chemical sensor. I was exposed to everything, and it helped narrow down what my true interests were within STEM. Just this past summer, I took part in MIT's online science, technology, and engineering community, where I had the opportunity to take a course in machine learning. I spent my nights programming through challenging problem sets. I spent my mornings reading about the impact of artificial intelligence on the world around us. For my final project of the course, I created a program that would predict a patient's diagnosis of diabetes based off of an extensive database. It was a little rough around the edges, but I had the opportunity to fly out to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and present my work on MIT's campus. My project gave me a feeling of fulfillment. Not only was I creating, but I was creating something with a purpose. I was creating something that had a real-world application and the potential to help people. My experiences at Caltech and MIT may have happened outside of MSCP, but I couldn't imagine them happening without MSCP. My work in the STEM pathway classes helped me discover my love for exploring more, learning more, knowing more. My active participation in our after-school community gave me the confidence to defy the traditional idea of what it means to be an engineer. As a senior, college is right around the corner. Thinking about the future is a little scary, but I'm always comforted by the fact that I know I'm prepared for whatever comes next. The past 4 years that I've spent here at MSCP have shaped me into a person with perseverance, a person who challenges tradition, and a person who works for the betterment of those around them. I will carry these attributes with me forever, and they will be what guides me through college and everything that follows. I will never forget the opportunities that have been made available to me thanks to MSCP. I can't help but hope that these resources will be made available to more students. I hope that these students will have someone who believes in them, like my school believed in me.
Miranda, thank you. Thank you so much. It was an incredible story. And you're going to be an amazing engineer. We know it. It has been a really big year for ExED. We embarked on a strategic planning process to guide our work in the next 3 to 5 years, and I really want to thank everyone who helped us on that. We looked back at our growth, which in 1998, we had no clients, and now in 2018, we're working with 115 schools in 70 organizations that serve over 45,000 students. We've also provided $240 million in financing for 43 charter school facilities, and that's primarily through our New Markets Tax Credit Program. One of the really cool parts that people don't always know about our tax credit program is that after 7 years, about 25 to 30% of the loan is forgiven. And we've already had many schools that have hit that 7-year mark. So our tax credit program has made available over $23 million in grants to the charter schools that have participated. Going forward, our strategic plan focused on 3 areas. First, improving our technology so it meets the changing needs of our clients. We're starting this with a brand new website, and we will become exed.org rather than exed.net, but we can use both for a long while. I really want to give a shout out to the Sugarman Communications Group who designed our new logo, website, helped make the video that you're going to see, and help us communicate our work. They are over there. Sugarman, thank you. Second, ExED is really committed to making it the best place to work ever. We have an amazing staff, and we will continue to invest and prioritize their work. Third, we plan to continue to advance the sector. What that means, for us, it means working on facility stuff, partnering with LAUSD on long-term win-win solutions. We're also working on 2 projects that fit into this advancing the sector. Last year, we partnered with charter board partners to recruit, train, match professionals and community leaders to charter school boards of directors. We worked with 11 of our clients to identify new board members, and we learned a lot, but it was really successful, and we're going to do it again in 2019. The second project is creating the first public boarding school in California in partnership with the ExED Foundation and LA Metro and LA County. We have an LA Metro board member here, and especially after Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas's office. We have a site at Vermont and Manchester Avenues, and we are partnering with ExED, which has done boarding schools already, to create a 400-student charter boarding school for students who've been touched somewhere with the LA County system, for kids who really need a 24-hour place with services. We are thrilled that LA Metro and LA County will support the boarding part to the tune of $10 million a year. So we're really thrilled about that. This entire site at Vermont and Manchester will also include a grocery store, 180 units of affordable housing, and a Metro training center. And I am just so excited because that wraps up everything I've done. It's so exciting. It's a true community economic development project, and I believe this ExED LA boarding school is going to be a tremendous asset for LA. ExED would not be here without our founder and our board chairman for 20 years. I am deeply grateful for the personal investment Bill Seyert has put into ExED to jumpstart the organization, and for the partnership, mentorship, friendship, and leadership he has provided. Bill Seyert.
Thank you, Anita. You can tell why ExED is great because Anita is personally and totally invested every day in what we do. How did we get here? 22 years ago, I was crazy enough to think that I could become the superintendent of the LA school system. Obviously, I was wrong, but I tried. I got down to the final two, and they picked the other guy. But with my experiences in visiting some of you, many of you I know, some of you I don't, I thought, what can I do to help kids in LA? And the charter school idea and doing the back office came up. And so I sat down in a Starbucks on a napkin and tried to figure out financially how it would work with another gentleman. And we decided that we'd form it 20 years ago. That's why we're saying 20 years, because that's happened 20 years ago. Our first holiday luncheon like this, we had 12 people in a pizza parlor on the 3rd Street Promenade. So we've grown. I want to say thank you to all of you because this, I'm not sure ecosystem is the right name, but it's the education ecosystem of Los Angeles has helped so many kids, like we just saw, to have a chance for a great education. And that's what we're all about. That's what we're about. We're going to give you a video of what ExED is, but before I do that, I want to say the reason we do what we do is because we have great employees. And as Anita said, we have a lot more than we used to have when we had 3. And many of them are here, so I'd like the employees to stand up and be recognized. If you're an ExED employee, stand up. Thank you, all of you. Our employees are in Los Angeles, so they're in San Diego, and I think I saw Larry back there with his crew from San Diego, so thanks for being here. The other group that's really important is our board of directors, and the board came from people that I put up the arm on to join and help me in this process, and many of them are still here 20 years later after I put the arm on them. And so I'd like our board of directors to please stand, and we want to say thank you to you guys for what you've done. Appreciate it.
In our LA education world, we have some big changes happening in the new year. Jed Wallace is leaving as head of the California Charter School Association, CCSA, and Mirna Castrejón is leaving Great Public Schools Now to take the helm of CCSA, and Ana Ponce is leaving Camino Nuevo Charter Academy to take the helm of Great Public Schools Now. So a lot of musical chairs going on. These are amazing leaders who have truly made such a difference for our children, and I know they will continue to. So I would ask that all 3 stand and be acknowledged. Jed Wallace has led the California Charter School Association through enormous growth, and always with integrity. I remember once talking to him on the phone, and he was walking back to Starbucks because the cashier had given him just a little bit too much change. He is truly a mensch. It takes great guts and vision to make way for a new leader. Jed, come on up because we want to give you something. And all of us, thank you for your leadership. I have to read it. It says, on behalf of ExED, we give you this picture that was made by a Fenton Avenue student, and I know Fenton Avenue is dear to your heart. It says, Jed Wallace, thank you for your extraordinary leadership and advocacy for excellent education for all students. Your friends at ExED.
Congratulations to ExED. There are so many things that allow California's charter schools and Los Angeles' charter schools to excel. The one thing is that we've got amazing support organizations. And when I think about the support organizations that are just absolutely marquee, ExED is at the top of the list. So thank you so much. I also want to acknowledge Myrna Castrejón, who's our incoming CEO. Just such a remarkable person. And I'll try this joke here. Myrna is coming in to CCSA. Anna goes in to Camino. People, I'm applying for Camino job. And if I got it, it would be all of us being promoted. It's like an Escher painting, right? You know. But it's just one of the blessings of having this job that there's just such extraordinary people to hand the role to. So Myrna, I wish you well, and I know you're going to do an absolutely great job. For everyone here, I just say thank you for making this experience at CCSA such a meaningful one. I spent my 7 years teaching here. Yes, I care about all communities, but I do say there is something very special about the Los Angeles place. And what we have created here, the story that we have made here, is just absolutely extraordinary. And I have asked on many, many occasions favors of many people in this room. And time again, I've seen you guys all step up and do it beyond anything that I would have requested. I made a ridiculous request of everybody in this room last spring to turn out in a grassroots effort that we were doing around the governor's race, and you guys all blew way beyond anything that I'd asked of you, and I'd made this stupid commitment to sumo wrestle with Sylvia Fajardo if in fact you guys got past this, and it was this one promise that I had not kept. So I asked the folks at Fenton, and I asked Sylvia Fajardo, could I deliver on my sumo wrestling pledge to everyone, and we did it last week. And I will tell you that Sylvia and I were tied 1-1 against the twin bureaucrats of the apocalypse. But then Sylvia came over to me and said, Jed, let's do the old clothesline trick. And so in the definitive third match, Sylvia and I took down the bureaucrats and won. But it's just a slightly fun way of just saying, I personally take my promises seriously. CCSA takes its promises seriously. We owe you guys so much. And I know that if we bring the same spirit of the tagline, the tag team, two of us together, charter schools and CCSA continuing to work together, I know that we will maintain momentum and we will be able to make more kids have even greater opportunities like we saw in this amazing video just a couple minutes ago. So again, to ExED and to all of you here, thank you so much.
And we're really honored to have two courageous leaders of our LAUSD school board here. So come on up, Board President Monica Garcia, and right after Board Vice President Nick Melvoin are just going to say a few words, and I'm really happy you're here.
Buenas tardes, happy holidays. I walked into the room and I went, wow, because I too have been to these things before. And as I sat and listened to our student speaker in the video, I have to tell you how grateful I am that I got to know you. I have to tell you how grateful I am that you have helped me learn. And in turn, we have used that and we helped LA Unified learn. So over the 20 years of ExED, and for me it's 18 years in BD2, I think many of us have stories on how change is real and it is present, and it is in all of us learning, because there is no one way. But together, we have led the movement for children to have quality experiences and for a system that we rely on to struggle with itself and maybe raise that bar and that vision. And so at LA Unified, we have been disturbed, and that is good. And I celebrate ExED and all of its partners, and I join with you in the commitment that we must do more. So thank you, thank you, thank you to all of the leaders in the room. Your struggle, your love, your commitment, your emotional fortitude and your psychological grit, and your willingness to show up over and over and over again on behalf of the possibility that indeed we can get to 100% graduation and high quality opportunities inside big urban America are possible. Those exist because of you. And so from a very, very grateful personal place to a very, very, very challenged public political place, I just want you to know you've changed the world here. And we have students inside and outside the system pushing on all adults to learn so that the class of 2031 that is in our kindergarten has less barriers. And secondly, so one, thank you. I do love all of you, and I have been inspired by your work, and I'm gonna ask you, it does matter who's on the school board, and so stay with us. Stay with us, challenge all 7 of us to see what you see, feel what you feel, hear what you hear, and let us not let any elected official in LA or California or the United States say they serve our families when they ignore our children. Let us figure out how to penetrate the noise that really asks us to divide instead of come together and just serve and lead and love. I wish you the absolute best in the next 20 years, and I thank you for being here, for fighting the fight, and for inviting others to come close. It is my great, great pleasure to serve on the Board of Education with Nick Melvoin. He makes me look like a moderate sometimes, and so, our Vice President, Nick Melvoin.
Love you. Thank you to our fearless leader, Board President Garcia. Thank you to Anita for your visionary, inclusive, and compassionate leadership. Thank you to Bill. What Bill didn't tell you is that 22 years ago, when the Board of Education went with the other guy, they then called him to break the news and then said to him, well, you know, you know about finance, you know about contracts, can you write the contract for the other guy? So, and speaking of LA Unified, I mean, things are so sleepy and smooth and calm over there that we decided to come take a few hours. I only came because I heard this was in a church, and I just think we need some. But I do want to congratulate you on 20 years of service. I was getting bar mitzvahed, and you were rolling up your sleeves and helping to serve kids. And the only reason that I am in this fight is because so many people in this room paved the way for those of us to have it with you. And I think 20 years in, not only have you changed the lives of tens of thousands of children, but you've proven a concept, and you've also, like Monica was saying, made us all better. Look at LA Unified, look at any district in California before charters came into their district and after, and you won't see those individual lives change. You will see a movement that has forced districts to improve. And you at our heels makes us all better. And so I think it's incumbent now upon school boards and districts and the state legislature to actually not justify why charters should exist, but why all schools shouldn't have the flexibility and innovation that you have led with. And I spoke last week to a group of 20 or so state legislators, and that was my charge to them, which was, you need to justify to us why the ed code that is applicable to charters isn't the entire ed code, and why the freedoms and innovations that have worked and are changing the life outcomes for tens of thousands of kids in the state aren't applicable to all families. And I think I see that as a third way in this political climate as we continue our movement. And I just want to say quickly, if there's anyone who embodies a kind of a third way and an innovative way to solve conflict, it really is our speaker today, Father Boyle. And I still have a copy of Tattoos on the Heart on my bedside table from my days teaching, and so everyone should read it. And I think if we followed your advice and your call for boundless compassion, and a compassion in his words that stands in awe of what the poor have to carry rather than in judgment of the way they carry it, we'd all do even better by kids. So thank you. Thank you all for having me. I hope to retire in a year or two, but here's to 20 more years of service to Los Angeles. So thank you.
And once Father Gregory Boyle agreed to speak, I knew that our theme would be compassion, which often feels in short supply today. When I see people, just like you and me, trying to escape terror and death to come to the US, I am always reminded that I am a child of German Jewish refugees who only got to this country with a whole lot of luck. My grandparents had their US visa in hand, and then the US closed its borders, and a courageous family hid them in Holland for 2 years. This summer, at a family reunion, I learned I had relatives on the MS St. Louis, a German ship that had 900 Jewish German refugees. They were denied entry to Cuba, to Canada, and the US. A 90-year-old relative that I met at the reunion who was on the kinder transport, where parents just sent their children on a train to England to get them safe, shared that her parents were on the MS St. Louis. The captain of the ship told Belgium that France was willing to accept 200 refugees. And then he told France that Belgium was going to accept 200 refugees. And he did the same with the Netherlands and the UK, even though nobody had agreed to accept them. It was just a way to hopefully save lives. Again, my relatives were lucky because they got to go to England, where their children had already been sent on the kinder transport. But most of the passengers perished. These were people just like you and me. I know that all of you do this work because you see the children as us and not them. Father Gregory Boyle is the perfect person to share his thoughts on seeing us and not them. He's a native Angelino, entering the Jesuits in 1972 and ordained as a Catholic priest in 1984. He holds a lot of degrees: a bachelor's degree in philosophy and English from Gonzaga University, a master's degree in English from Loyola Marymount, a Master of Divinity degree from the Western School of Theology, and a Master of Sacred Theology degree. That's 3 masters. He led the Dolores Mission Church in Boyle Heights, which at the time was the poorest Catholic parish in the city. He witnessed the devastating impact of gang violence on his community, which led him to founding Homeboy Industries, a very well-recognized gang intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry program, which also includes a charter school. Father Boyle is the subject of Academy Award winner documentary called G-Dog. He's received the California Peace Prize, been inducted into the California Hall of Fame, and in 2014, the White House named Father Boyle a champion of change. I've been a fan from afar, following the rise of Homeboy Industries. I eat at Homegirl Cafe often, and as a fellow Durfee Foundation sabbatical recipient, I've had the opportunity to hear him speak. My book group even read Tattoos on the Heart, so I'm just a groupie from afar, one of many, I'm sure. He's joined today by Steve Avalos, a former trainee and senior navigator for Homeboys. And Steve serves on the board of a charter school ExED works with, Collegiate High School. Father G and Steve, thank you for joining us today. Come on up. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Steve Avalos, and I'm a part of the Homeboy community. I guess for me, it's the idea of Homeboy Industries. It's love to the unloved, and it's hope to the hopeless. I'm now, I started off as a navigator, started off as a trainee, and then a navigator at Homeboy Industries. I used to work with the youth, and I still work with the youth, but I would go into juvenile halls, into the schools, into placements, and for me it would be really instilling hope, because I come from that lifestyle. Growing up, everybody in my family was all from the same gang, whether it be my mother or my father and my brothers. Everybody was from the same gang. There was a lot of death in our family. My father was murdered before I was born. My brother was murdered at 15. Most of my uncles ended up in prison, one with life without. My stepdad spent 35 years in prison. That's the only father I've ever known. By the time I was 17 years old, I was sent to prison. After 17 years at 34, I came home. And one of the things going in is what the secret, shame is in your secrets. I didn't know how to read. And being in there, that was one of the first things I wanted to do, was learn how to read. And then I went and got my GED. And then I started taking college courses. And then I would take a trade and become a universal technician. And little by little by little, what I was realizing is that something I never had in my life, and that was hope. And when hope started to come, I started seeing a future, that maybe I wouldn't sit in prison for the rest of my life. Maybe one day I would come home. And that opportunity came at the age of 34, and endless opportunities after that. Now I do serve on the board right there, charter in East Los Angeles, and I'm a part of Homeboy Industries. And one of the things I do at Homeboy now is I'm a director. I overlook the navigators and case management. And it's just continuing to go with the mindset of always is just to serve and give back. Because I think like at the end of the day, especially for the youth, not every choice, G would always say, not every choice is equal. But at the end of the day, like every kid is like, education is key, it's hope. But also to be able to stay focused when you got gangs on every corner and you're wondering how mom's gonna pay the rent and every street you walk by is a liquor store. And how do you stay focused? And I think like that's the thing here is to instill hope and to believe that there's nothing that you cannot do and you are worthy of a better life. And I feel like that's what at Homeboy Industries, what we do. Most gang members are broken, and it's a lot of pain, a lot of death, but a lot of low self-worth and self-esteem. And I know for me, that's what happened to me. And all I ever did is I would rely on gangs to build my self-worth because I didn't have any. And now being a part of Homeboy Industries, I feel like there's nothing I cannot do. And there's nothing I'm willing not to do. I feel like everything is possible, and everybody I cross paths with and everyone we work with at Homeboy Industries is the same way. We have a lot of youth that we work with, and a lot of them come from charter schools, and they're able to do something different because we're able to instill hope. And this would have never been possible. I know me coming home or me being involved in this would have never been possible had it not been for Homeboy Industries. And with that, it's my honor because thousands and thousands of lives have been changed behind this movement. And I consider Homeboy Industries a movement. And none of this would be possible without the compassion and the love and the hope of Father Greg Boyle. So with that, please welcome Father Greg Boyle.
So I'm just honored to be in your presence and to acknowledge what it is that you've done for 20 years. You've chosen to make the world look differently than it currently looks. Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So this luncheon is about standing against forgetting that as we celebrate 20 years of ExED. It's an accompaniment that announces a message. What if we were to stand at the margins and because we make a decision to take that stance, the margins get erased? This luncheon is a little bit like what Martin Luther King says about church. It's not the place you've come to, it's the place you will go from. And you go from here to reimagine things, especially in the current state in which we happen to find ourselves in this country, a place that's growing alarmingly the opposite of the kinship to which we're all invited, where there is no us and them, there's just us. And so what ExED has really done with this exquisite expertise and with their partners in education, including us at Learning Works and Homeboy, is we've started to galvanize our own imaginations, to imagine a circle of compassion, and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. And so somebody like Miranda gets to be brought in. And this is an organization for 20 years that has sought to dismantle the barriers that exclude, which is at the heart of what Bill's initial vision for this was. And so all of us are called to go from this place to stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, to acknowledge that you can't judge a book by its cover, but you can't judge a book by its first chapter either. and to stand with those whose burdens are more than they can bear, and those whose dignity has been denied, even though we've all were born wanting the same things, and not all choices were created equal. And so we stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, because our country needs us to do that now more than ever. And we stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop. And we stand with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And so we announce a message of kinship and connection and exquisite mutuality, where we obliterate once and for all the illusion that we are separate. And we go from this luncheon to do that. And we brace ourselves, even though the world might well accuse us of wasting our time. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "In this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." And what ExED has done in the last 20 years with their partners is they've broadened our way of seeing so that other voices get heard. All of us are called to go from this place to be enlightened witnesses, people who, through your kindness and tenderness and focused, attentive love, return people to themselves. At Homeboy, we're kind of allergic to this notion about holding the bar up and asking homies to measure up. We kind of just show up and hold the mirror up and tell people the truth. And we all share the same truth, that you are exactly what God had in mind when God made you. And then you watch folks who you accompany become that truth. You watch as they inhabit that truth. And no bullet can pierce it, no 4 prison walls can keep it out, and death can't touch it, because it's huge. A handful of months ago, I buried my 92-year-old mother, who gave birth to 8 kids and wasn't one bit afraid of dying. In fact, a couple weeks before she died, she was just kind of giddy and kind of ecstatic. And she says, "I've never done this before." Which is something you might say before skydiving. But at her funeral, they had one of my nieces and nephews brought up this license plate, this framed record. And we had discovered when we were kids that she was an opera singer before she decided to have 8 kids. And she had made this one recording on this one clunky record. And the record was "Oh Holy Night." And in it, as kids, I remember we would play the grooves off this thing. And it would say that one line, "Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth." And yeah, it's about Christmas, and yeah, it's about Jesus, but how is it not the job description of everybody at this luncheon? You appear, and the soul feels its worth. It's how it's supposed to work. That this luncheon is not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. So you can hold up the mirror and return people to themselves. But in the process, you're returned to yourself, because it is an exquisitely mutual kind of activity. But part of the task always is to dismantle the messages of shame and disgrace that get in the way, that keep people from seeing their truth. Because that's the principal suffering of the poor throughout history, shame and disgrace. And how do we lift that for each other so that we can mutually be returned to our own dignity? As a priest, I say all my church really is all these detention facilities, so I'm in every single one of them, all the probation camps, juvenile halls. And so I race to like 2 of them on a Saturday. My schedule's always the same. And then I race back to Dolores Mission, where I was pastor and where Homeboy Industries was born 30 years ago. And because I know everybody and homies ask me to do stuff, you know, my Saturdays are always packed in exactly the same way. 1 o'clock baptism, 2 o'clock quinceañera, 3 o'clock wedding, 4 o'clock exorcism. Just checking to see if you're still listening. Every once in a while you gotta check. I've never done one of those, but I raced home and it was like 12:30 when I got to Boyle Heights, and I thought, well, I have time, this was years ago, where I can go and check my mail at our First Street storefront, one of our first offices and headquarters of Homeboy Industries. So there I am, contento, feliz, all by myself reading the mail, when all of a sudden this woman walks in, and I find out her name is Lisa, and I've never talked to her. This is the first time she's ever stepped foot in Homeboy. She's kind of well known on First Street. She was a prostitute, a heroin addict, a gang member, a felon, a parolee. The homies would call her La Gritona because she was always screaming. She would scream at the bartender next door who would toss her out daily like clockwork at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She would yell into a payphone, "Just let me stay tonight," pleading with friends or family members. And this is the first time she ever steps into my office, and I notice now it's 10 minutes to 1 in my baptism. And she comes right in, she plunks herself down, she kind of looks at all the photographs on my wall, and she launches right in. "I need help," she says. "Oh, I've been to like 50 rehabs. I'm known all over, nationwide." And then she kind of shifts a little. She says, "Went to Catholic schools all my life. Went to elementary. I even graduated from Sacred Heart High School in Lincoln Heights." Then she gets silent and still. And she says, "In fact, first time I ever used heroin was right after I graduated. And I've been trying to stop since the moment I began." And I watch as she leans her head against the wall behind her, and her eyes become like two ponds, water rising to meet its edges and spilling over. And she cries, and I let her cry until finally she levels her gaze at me and she says, "I am a disgrace." And suddenly her shame meets mine, because when I had seen her step into my office that afternoon, I had mistaken her for an interruption. We dismantle the messages of shame and disgrace that keep us from seeing the truth of who we are, so that the soul can feel its worth. And the measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. And so we choose to make friends with our wounds. Otherwise, we grow tempted to despise the wounded. There was a homie years ago, everybody called him Bandit, and I can't remember what his real name was. I think it was Jaime, but we all called him Bandit. And he was a gang member, and I remember I would watch him, and I would ride my bike in the projects at night in Aliso Village housing projects, and he'd ride his bike up to cars and sell crack, and he was into his gang. I'd offer him a job, and a way out, he always declined. Until one day he walked into my office. I couldn't believe my eyes. I say, "Y ese milagro?" And he says what gang members often say, "I'm tired of being tired." And so he entered into our 18-month training program, and he worked side by side with enemies, guys he used to shoot at. And we always insist at Homeboy that nobody stop their own education. If they can't read, then learn to. If you haven't finished high school, finish. And he did. He got his GED, and he went on to East LA College. And he was inhabiting the truth of who he was. And then he moved on beyond us to a new job that paid better than Homeboy, which is usually easy to accomplish. And then within 5 years, he was el mero chingón of the whole place. He was kind of supervising this big warehouse, and he was admired, and he bought a home and wife and 3 kids. And then one Friday, he was late. He calls me, and there's a little bit of panic in his voice, and he says, "Gee, you have to bless my daughter." I said, "¿Qué pasó, mijo? Is she sick, or is she in the hospital?" And he says, "Oh, no. On Sunday, she's going to Humboldt College. But that's far, that's way up north, and she's a little chaparrita, and we're afraid for her. Do you think you could give her a blessing before she goes?" I said, "Are you kidding? I'd be honored. Look, tomorrow's Saturday. I have an exorcism at 1. Why don't you come at 12:30? We'll do a little send-off." And so, sure enough, right at 12:30, he and his wife show up, and the 3 kids, including tiny little Jessica. And so I said, "Well, let's stand in front of the altar, and let's put her in the middle. Let's encircle her. Everybody touch her. Everybody put your hands on her shoulder. Go ahead, put your hands on her head." And we all bow our heads, and we close our eyes. And as the homies say, I do a long-ass prayer. I go on. And somewhere in the middle of this prayer, I notice we've all become chillones. We're all blubbering and crying, and I don't know why we're crying exactly, except for the fact that Bandit and his wife don't know anybody who's ever gone to college except me. Certainly nobody in their families. So, I finished the prayer, and we kind of wipe our eyes, and we're laughing about how mushy we got. And to change the subject, I look at Jessica. "Hey, what are you going to study at Humboldt College?" And she was very quick. "Forensic psychology." I go, "Damn, forensic psychology?" And Bandit says, "Yeah, she wants to study the criminal mind." And Jessica looks over at her father, and she does one of these, And he sees her, and he laughs, and he says, "Yep, I'm going to be her first subject." So we go outside, and big abrazos, and the family piles into the car, but Bandit hangs back, and I'm glad he has. And I said, "¿Sabes qué, mijo? Te digo una cosa. I give you credit for the man you've chosen to become, for choosing to walk in your own footsteps. I'm proud of you." And his eyes instantly well up with tears, and he says, "¿Sabes qué? I'm proud of myself. All my life, people called me a lowlife, a bueno para nada, a good for nothing. I guess I showed them." I said, "Yeah, I guess you did." And the soul felt its worth. Exactly what God had in mind. Don't think for a second that this luncheon is the place you've come to. It's always been the place you would go from, and you go from here to erase the margins by standing at them. You go from here not to make a difference, but to go to the margins so that the folks at the margins make us different. And you go from here, and you have ceased to care whether anyone will ever accuse you of wasting your time. For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing. And may ExED continue to sing and have other voices heard for the next 20 years. Thank you all very much.